In this video, we're going to focus more specifically on strings. Now, if you remember, we've used strings up to this point, basically as literals, but because it is actually a reference type, and because it comes from a class, and we've been learning about classes that have methods, we're going to learn about some methods that the string class has that are actually pretty useful. So up to this point, we have created strings using a format similar to how we create primitive variables, except we assign it quotations. But just like we've noticed with constructors in our classes in this unit, the string class does have a version of a constructor that allows you to assign it by using the word new. Now, strings are special because they are objects, which means that we could use the new operator to create a string object, but they are so predominantly used that there is a shorter way, which is more aligned with the way that the primitive data type works. And so both of these are acceptable, and then you can also use operators to combine strings. Okay? So something important about a string is made up of a string of characters, and each of these characters have a position. Now in Java, when we start to recognize the position of a character, we talk about its index value. And in Java, we start counting at 0. And once we start counting, every character, including punctuation and spaces, has a position value. So in the string j.spacesmith, j is at the index of 0, and then the last character, h, is at the index of 7. Now this is a total of 8 characters. You'll notice that the 8th character has an index position of 7. And that's not going to vary from string to string. If I have 10 characters, my last one will be with an index value of 9. If I have 100 characters, the last one will be 99. And so that's a significant feature, and we'll see how we can use that feature soon. So string concatenation, we've dabbled with it a little bit in our print line statements, but we can join together strings with other strings, or we can join strings with primitive values by using this plus operator. And if I am joining a string with a primitive value, it implicitly converts our primitive data to string. The concatenation operator is at the same precedence level as addition, and so it still applies that we read it from left to right unless we are forced through addition to have something else happen. Forced through parentheses to have a different operation happen first before. Alright, so here, hello is a string, and so even though this is a primitive data, when I take a string and I join it with primitive data, it's going to implicitly convert this to a string, and it's just going to basically smush the two things together. Here we have the number 1 with the literal, and we're going to join those together to get 1 ABC, and we're going to take that and we're going to join it with 2 to get 1 ABC2. Here we have the string literal ABC joined with 1, so that's ABC1, and then ABC1 gets joined with 2 to get ABC1, 2. Now if you were thinking that we would add this to get 3, remember we go from left to right, so to force that to actually add, you would have had to do addition, and that would have been ABC3. Okay, so if you want this to do addition, you would have to force it through the introduction of parentheses. Alright, so what about here? So going from left to right, 1 plus 2 is 3, and 3 gets joined with ABC to be 3ABC. Multiplication has a higher precedence than addition and concatenation, so we would multiply and get 27, and then we would concatenate ABC and 27 to get ABC 27. Notice this is inside the double quotation marks, which means it's a string literal, it's not a primitive integer. And so a string together with an int will just smush them together. And then here, remember, even though subtraction and addition have the same precedence level, we go from left to right. So 4 minus 1 is 3, and then 3 joined with this is 3ABC. And as we've seen before, you can display a string together with the result of an operation, and we've done that in previous lessons. Now, the string class has some very useful methods that we'll use. The ones that we're going to focus on today are the length method, which you'll notice has 0 parameters and is going to return an int. We have 2 versions of the substring method. Remember that substring method is going to be overloaded when it has the same name and a different number type or order of parameters. So here we have the substring method, and we can either pass it 2 index values or 1 index value. Now it doesn't say what it's going to return, but it is going to return a string. And we'll talk about the range of values that's returned. Equals and compare to are very useful, but we're going to put a pin in those into a later lesson. And then index of is useful. It's going to tell you the index position where a particular string starts. And if it's not found, it's going to return a -1. So we're going to focus on these 3. And remember, this top one is just the constructor, which says that you can create a new string by passing it the string that you want it to be. So let's walk through this example. So let's create a string variable identifier S1, and we're going to make it programming in Java. Now each of these characters has a position number, and we start counting at 0. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Notice we're saying 0, just it makes it simpler because then I'm be pushing my numbers over. So just think of this as 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So this goes from 0 to 18 in terms of index numbers, and so it has a length of 19. And so you remember, your last position is always going to have an index position that's 1 smaller than the length. So let's talk about index of. Index of is searching your string for a particular string or substring. So if I'm looking at S1 for an I, I'm going to search starting from the beginning, and I'm going to find it right here. And that index position is 8, so that's why it's going to print an 8. If I'm looking for Graham, I'm looking for that completely, which is right here. So where does that start? That starts at 3. What about high? So let me search. High, high, high. Don't find it. And so it's going to print or return a -1 that we then print. It's going to return a -1 to indicate it's not found. So that's how index of. You start from the beginning, you search until you find it. If you don't find it, it's going to return a -1. Let's talk about substring. So substring and math.random both have exclusive behaviors. What I mean is, when I'm talking about s.substring, 7 to 10, it means I'm including 7 and I'm not including 10. Okay? I'm only going to be dealing with characters at position 7, 8, and 9. One little helpful thing here, 10 minus 7 is 3. I know I'm only dealing with 3 characters. So the way substring works is you go to your first position, so that would be 7, which is here, and then I go up to, but stop before I get to 10. So that would be M, I, N, and then I stop and I don't include this. So it's going to return min that I then print. The other version that we have is going to work in such a way that I just tell you where it starts. It starts at 12, and so that would be here. And I don't tell you where it stops. It just goes to the end, so in Java. All right, this next version, what I'm giving you is I'm giving you the start, and then I'm saying we're not including 3. And so remember, 3 minus 2 is 1, so it's just one character that we care about, and that's at index 2. So if I go to index 2, that's an O. And then a substring from 2 to 2, well, 2 minus 2 is 0, so that means I want a 0 character string. It's not going to be null, it's going to be the empty string. And remember, the difference between null and an empty string is here, the empty string is an actual object, whereas null doesn't have any object. Okay, so substring can be a little bit tricky when you have the 2 parameters because it's habit that students want to include that last one, but we stop short of it. And like I said, a helpful hint is subtract those 2 numbers, and that's telling you how many characters you have. So here, instead of displaying, remember we talked about return values. When we have something that's returned, we want to do something with it. One thing to do with it is to print it out. Another thing is to assign it to a variable. So remember, here we're talking about from 10 inclusive to 17 exclusive. So that's only going to be 7 characters. So starting from 10, which is here, and stopping right before there is going to be G space in space JA, and that's it. And that's assigned to a different string called S2. Alright, so let's look here. How would I extract the word Java? So Java is from here to here. It's starting at 9, and I want to include 12, so I'm going to stop here at 13. Okay, so I want to put my little parentheses at the next character because that's going to be 4 characters. And so that's why it starts at 9 and goes up to, but not including, 13. Now in future units we'll talk about equals, but equals is pretty simple. Okay, Java is case sensitive, which means capital letters and lowercase letters are not the same. And so if I wanted to see if these 2 were equal, they're not. If I wanted to see if this hello is equal to this hello, they are. All right, so like I said, we'll talk more about comparing strings at a different time, and also compare to. But we can modify strings by using substring. So here, what's happening is I create memory location S, and remember we're not storing Kendrick here, we're storing a reference to the object. And then in this next line, I am basically creating a different object, Snoop Dogg. And I didn't write this. And then I'm assigning it to S, which means S is no longer pointing to Kendrick, it's now pointing to Snoop Dogg. This is disregarded unless another variable is pointing to it, it's basically discarded as garbage. And then so when I now do a substring on it, we are referring to the most recent change, which is Snoop Dogg. And remember that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if I'm doing a substring from 0 to 5, remember that's inclusive 0, exclusive 5. So that's basically here, just Snoop. If you want to actually change a string's value, you have to assign it to a variable. Substring in and of itself just returns the value. It doesn't update your string. So if you actually want to take the substring and then update your string with it, you have to assign it back. Okay? So there's just some additional examples that you can go through. But watch my next video, because in my next video I'm going to show you a Java file that you can use to tinker with the ones that we talked about today.